The Zombies are one of the most distinctive British invasion bands. Their groundbreaking 1968 album Odyssey and Oracle is now considered a masterpiece of Baroque pop and psychedelic rock, but it was largely overlooked at the time of its release. With little fanfare, the Zombies disbanded before receiving the recognition they deserved for the album. The members moved on to other music projects or took day jobs. But the story doesn't end there. Initially a commercial disappointment, the album seemed destined for obscurity until the US label released Time of the Season as a single. A year after the album's release, the song became a surprise hit, reaching number 3 on Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Cashbox chart, finally earning the Zombies the recognition they had missed. Sounds great, right? Not exactly. No one told the Zombies their song was a massive hit in the US, and there's the rub. While the Zombies' Time of the Season was climbing the charts, lead singer Colin Blunstone was sitting in an insurance office answering calls completely unaware. Meanwhile, 2 other bands are touring, pretending to be the Zombies, reaping all the rewards and praise, while this poor guy is working on burglary claims. So how did this happen? Let's dive into this bizarre story behind the Brazen Zombies ripoff and how they reacted. The fact that the Zombies did not know their song was released as a single and becoming a massive hit really speaks to how different the times were when you could have a hit in the US and be blissfully unaware living in England. In 1969, artists couldn't track the success in real time like they can today. Instead, they relied on record labels, radio stations, and industry publications for updates. Without a manager or active contract, a band like the Zombies wouldn't automatically be informed about their music's performance. Meanwhile, the Zombies are now in demand, but nowhere to be found, at least not in the US. So an opportunistic promotion company decided to put together an impostor band or 2 and send them on the road touring as the Zombies while they had a massive hit, mind you. But this is where it gets even crazier. One impostor band also practices by going out to play as another lesser-known band with a hit record to test the waters first. After they are able to pull it off, it just emboldens them further, and also emboldens the promotion company to put together an imposter band of the Animals who are also broken up. But surely the fans will notice that they are not the same people, right? The bands come up with quite the stories whenever they're confronted, which we'll get into. And not only that, but 2 members of one of the imposter bands will go on to iconic status with another band in the 70s. The depth of deception for a quick buck is at the heart of the matter, but who is really behind this bizarre con? The album Odyssey and Oracle was initially rejected by the Zombies' US label Columbia Records until Al Kooper, a musician and producer who had recently joined Columbia, championed it. The label finally released the album in April 1968, but it didn't make an immediate impact. By the time Odyssey and Oracle was released, the Zombies had broken up. Their lack of recent commercial success had left them disillusioned, and they didn't anticipate future success. Time of the Season was released as a single in the US. It took months to gain traction though, finally breaking the Billboard Top 100 in early 1969 and peaking at number 3 in March. The sound fit in perfectly with the psychedelic times of '69. By that time, the band members had moved on to other projects, assuming that the Zombies were a closed chapter. Since the band was no longer together, they weren't actively tracking their music's performance. Without a manager keeping them updated, they were unaware of the song's growing success in America. Rod Argent had already formed his new band, Argent, while Colin left music temporarily to work in insurance. Colin recalls the career change in a 2023 interview with The Independent. The first couple of days there was a bit of pointing, but that was first day. I had to pick up the phone the same as everybody else when someone would ring up and ask a question about insurance. This led to a bizarre situation where Delta Promotions out of Michigan, who was managing Question Mark and the Mysterians and a number of smaller local bands, came up with the idea to capitalize on the absence of the Zombies. In the quiet, unassuming town of Bay City, far from the prying eyes of record labels and music magazines, a plan was unfolding. The scheme was simple, but bold. Find talented musicians, convince them that Delta Promotions had the rights to successful bands' music, and then mold them into a passable version of the Zombies. Once they were polished enough to fool a crowd, they'd be sent out on the road, playing to eager audiences who had no idea they were watching an imitation. Meanwhile, Delta sat back and collected a healthy cut of the profits, never having to step out in the spotlight. Bay City, with its isolation and lack of industry scrutiny, was the perfect hideout. From there, Delta could operate in the shadows, sending its impostor bands into bustling cities, while its masterminds Kehoe and Atherton kept their hands clean, far from the risks of exposure. In the 1960s, less than scrupulous businessmen ran the music industry with relative impunity, with artists serving primarily as commodities who were often exploited. They were easily replaced by eager up-and-coming artists who were looking for a big break. It's really heartbreaking how many talented musicians of this era ended up penniless while the businessmen made out like bandits. In Bay City, Michigan, local businessman Bill Kehoe and his partner Jim Atherton ran Delta Promotions, where they managed several bands and their tours. Question Mark and the Mysterians had a hit song, 96 Tears, in 1966, and was still touring around the U.S. playing that song, and headlined some of the tours with the Impostors. One of their employees, Tom Hocott, says in an interview, Kehoe and Atherton started telling me that they had acquired the rights to the music and the names of these bigger bands like the Zombies and the Animals. I knew it was probably BS, but I guess I didn't care. I was happy to be working in music. It was believable to many because throughout the 1960s, the music industry often treated artists as interchangeable, swapping out members as not to disrupt potential profits, placing value in the band name rather than the members themselves. There were two different bands touring the U.S. in 1969 calling themselves the Zombies, one out of Texas and the other out of Michigan. Both impostor groups were managed by Delta Promotions, the owners of which insisted they'd legally acquired the songs of the Zombies and other bands. In an era when fans didn't have much access to artists' whereabouts, or in some cases even know what they look like, they were able to pull this off for a little while. Additionally, bands from the early and mid-60s during the British invasion had been wearing suits and clean cut, became somewhat unrecognizable when they morphed into psychedelic hippies with long hair. Before joining the Texas band that posed as the Zombies, Mark Ramsey was an 18-year-old guitarist living on the outskirts of Dallas. He was good-looking and loved playing music. During his senior year, he saw local blues band The Gentlemen play a school concert featuring guitarist Sebastian Seeb Meter, who had scored a minor hit with It's a Cryin' Shame at just 16. Ramsey introduced himself, eager to make connections. He later befriended drummer Frank Beard in Fort Worth, who was well known in the Dallas scene for his double bass drum kit. Through Beard, Ramsey met Dusty Hill and saw his band American Blues. Soon after, Ramsey got the call to join the Zombies Impostor band, which then included Beard, Hill, and Meter. He isn't sure exactly how the offer came about, but he believes Meter's Florida tour with a Gentleman led them to Delta Promotions. The players were told that the operation was perfectly legal. According to Ramsey, who said in an interview later on, "As far as the Zombies, I was told they didn't exist, that they were only a studio sound. I was just excited and flattered. I'd been playing for a few years, and the other guys were pro level at that point. I didn't look at it as anything more than a chance to have some fun, hang out with some cool guys, learn some songs, go somewhere outside of this hillbillyville, and earn a little money." Before heading out as the Zombies, Delta Promotions had the Texas band do a trial run, posing as another recently disbanded group, the Rose Garden. The Los Angeles folk rock band had scored a top 20 hit in 1967 with Next Plane to London. They went along with it despite the fact that the real Rose Garden had a female lead singer, Diana DeRose. "People did start asking where the girl was, but we did okay," recalls Hill. To everyone's relief, the small string of shows throughout the South went smoothly, emboldening them to take it to the next level. The lack of repercussions led them to tour without a keyboard player for their Zombies gigs. Ramsey says that Beard began telling people their keyboardist had gotten busted in Dallas and was stuck in jail to explain away the missing band member. The Texas version of the Zombies headed to Michigan to get promotional photos, and like any proud Texan, they wore cowboy hats. Quite a leap from the sophisticated suits of the Zombies' British invasion days, But hey, who's gonna notice anyway, right? 2 of the members of the Texas version of the Zombies signed their real names, while 2 others signed stage names. The 2 who signed stage names were Frank Beard and Dusty Hill, who later went on to iconic status as ZZ Top. After a performance on June 22, 1969 as the Zombies, the Saginaw News Review said that the band were especially disappointing and the crowd began to leave during their 4th tune. The newspaper also says that the band didn't sound anything like they did back when they were selling millions of records. The change in sound is attributed to a complete transition of band members except the bass player. Delta Promotions would claim its band had 1 original member to anyone who happened to notice a difference. The headliner that night was Question Mark and the Mysterians, who in fact did have only 1 original member at this time. They performed the entire first song before realizing the mics were not working. The one song everyone in the crowd came to see, 96 Tears, could not be performed because the band's keyboard player quit a week earlier and they couldn't find a replacement. According to the review, when their 40-minute set was finally finished, there was no applause, nothing but dead silence. So it was easy to fit in with the other bad bands, whether legitimate or not. According to Hocott, most concert promoters knew they were booking fake versions of real bands. They didn't mind as long as the crowd showed up. Working independently, each promoter took a large cut of the profits, making the scheme profitable for everyone involved while the bands got a smaller cut. Ramsey later said in an interview about the bad review, "I don't remember anyone walking out. Were we perfect? No, we weren't the Zombies, but we were a blues rock band from Texas, a band with pretty good looks, better than the original Zombies." They played small clubs in Michigan and Wisconsin and went up into Canada, where they appeared on TV and played a gig in a prison, he recalls. Ramsey remembers earning about $200 a week. As for the fans who were getting an impostor band, Hocott says, when they were told, "Here comes the Zombies," they bought it. Fans left disappointed and the bands left town as quickly as possible. The less remembered, the better. Next, Delta formed a 5-piece version of the Zombies from Michigan that at least tried to recreate the psychedelic look with ascots and striped pants. The band was made up of members of an existing band, the Excels, who even had earlier regional success. As the new impostor Zombies, they had a tour bus and performed larger tours. They were so damn good, Hocott says. They were the perfect Zombies. If you heard them play Time of the Season, you couldn't tell the difference. Delta Promotions would claim its bands had original members to any media outlet who confronted them. When Rolling Stone contacted Bill Kehoe for a comment in December '69, he claimed that the quote-unquote American Zombies formed after the lead singer of the Zombies was killed and 2 other guys left. The Rolling Stone article in December 1969 titled "The Zombies Are a Stiff" reads, "The Zombies are no more. They're a group calling itself the Zombies, but these Zombies are not the Zombies who made the hit She's Not There, Tell Her No, Time of the Season. Those Zombies are British and split 2 years ago. The group now calling itself the Zombies have British accents, sort of, sometimes, and sometimes they forget. Then they draw and they refer to you all. Chris White, bass player for the British Zombies during their 4-year span, is good and pissed off. The pseudo-zombies, he says, are taking money from our fans and dragging down our reputation. They are also attempting to take money from Columbia Records." When the actual Zombies found out what was going on, they were so mad at this point that one of them had friends attend a show of the impostor Zombies at Whiskey A Go Go in October 1969 and confront them. They recorded the fake band members' responses to his questions. Chris White says, he had someone go along with a tape recorder as a journalist. They had a guitar player calling himself actual Zombies drummer Hugh Grundy. They asked him why he was now out in front as the singer, and he says in a Northern England accent, "Well, the boys want me out front and I'm the only original member." Then the interviewer says, "Didn't you used to be 5'10"? This guy was 5'6". "We had it on tape, but I don't know where it's gone now." Chris White recounts a meeting at his label, CBS Records in New York. Promoters at a radio station noticed the Zombies were coming to town and wanted to talk to him. I said, "Well, it's not the real Zombies, we're here." They said, "We don't know, you might be the fake Zombies. How do I know you really are Chris White?" This has to be as maddening as the impostors themselves when others begin to believe the impostors are actually you. Rod Argent and Chris White had a new band, Argent, while singer Colin Blunstone had now started a solo career. But the existence of the imposter zombies provided a strong incentive to reform the zombies and begin to record again. Their fear was if a fan went to see the imposter band and left disappointed, it's unlikely they'd purchase a record or buy a ticket to a future concert by one of the real band's members. But despite their efforts, they abandoned the idea. Like most criminal operations, Delta began to believe they were outsmarting everyone and they would not get caught, and began escalating their phony operations. They formed an imposter band of the Animals and sent them out on tour. The Animals were more well known in the US, where Eric Burdon was living, and in 1970 Rolling Stone wrote an article about Eric showing up at a performance with a baseball bat to confront the fake band. Although this was unable to be confirmed by Eric Burdon, who did not recall the incident. Hocott recalls the call from the band saying Eric Burdon and a bunch of bikers chased them around and threatened them. Finally, when they attempted to form a band called the Archies, Don Kirshner threatened legal action and Delta Promotions soon folded. Delta's Kehoe later claimed, "We never represented to anyone that these were the same groups that made the records." Others disagree and say Delta provided phony affidavits claiming the bands featured original members. With Delta Promotions collapsing under outside pressure, the bands on its roster scattered. The Texas Zombies returned to Dallas, leaving their fake band days behind and slipping back into their regular lives. While Dusty Hill and Frank Beard went on to form ZZ Top with guitarist and singer Billy Gibbons, they released their first album in 1971. The original Zombies laughed off the matter and went on to reclaim their status as the Zombies. Odyssey and Oracle became a cult favorite, and the Zombies were later recognized as pioneers of sophisticated 1960s pop. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019. The Zombies stood out from other British invasion bands with their jazz-inflected chords, Colin Blunstone's breathy vocals, and Rod Argent's sophisticated keyboard work. Their music influenced many later artists, including Paul Weller, who called their Odyssey album probably my all-time favorite record. They recalled in an interview with the Times of the British invasion, "It was extraordinary," says Argent. "You honestly couldn't go out. People would chase you around to get locks of your hair. They'd run after you with scissors." It took several decades of cult acclaim to finally convince original members Colin Blunstone and Rod Argent to reform in 2004. "When we did Glastonbury a few years ago," Argent tells The Independent, "we were in one of the smaller arenas. It was a marquee, and I guess it must have held up to 5,000 people. But when we started the set, there were just a few people in there, and I thought, oh God, I hope this is not going to be embarrassing. But when we started playing, it filled up, mostly with young people. And when we did Time of the Season, this huge audience of young people went completely crazy. And I said to Colin afterwards, how did they know it? It's never even been a hit here." When speaking of the mismanagement of the 1960s, "We were all easy bait," says Argent, who thinks that the older generation of managers and agents thought rock and roll would only last for a few short years, so they had better milk the cash cows while they still could. The exceptions to that were that the bands who were really successful with great management of their own generation, who knew what they were doing, like The Who with Kit Lambert or Andrew Loog Oldham with the Stones, who just fashioned their image completely. Most bands in the 60s had a rough time financially. The irony is that rock and roll lasted longer than any other form of music. She's Not There was the second of 4 songs recorded by the Zombies at a June 1964 recording session at Decca.
Well, no one told me about her, the way she lied.
Argent recalls, "I wrote the song for Colin's range. I could hear him singing it in my mind." The breathy, melancholic vocals of Colin Blunstone further deepened the song's emotional impact, making it one of the first true examples of Baroque pop, a style that would later influence bands like the Moody Blues and the Left Bank. Lyrically, She's Not There tells the story of a narrator struggling to understand the disappearance of a mysterious woman. The song never explains exactly why she's gone, leaving the listener to interpret the heartbreak and longing in their own way. This open-ended storytelling enhances the song's sense of emotional ambiguity. The repeated phrase, "No one told me about her," gives the song a haunting quality, as if the narrator is haunted by both her absence and his own ignorance. The song also became a Latin-infused hit for Santana in 1977. Tell Her No is a hit single written by Rod Argent and released in '64. Lyrically, Tell Her No is a plea from the narrator to another man, warning him not to fall for a girl who has already deceived him. The repeated phrase, Tell Her No, gives the song a hypnotic pleading quality, reinforcing the desperation and heartbreak in the lyrics. The word no is mentioned a total of 63 times in the lyrics.
No, 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 no.
Time of the Season perfectly captures the countercultural spirit of the late 1960s. Its dreamy production and sensual lyrics reflect the era's growing interest in free love, self-expression, and spiritual awakening. The question-answer format in the lyrics,
Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? Is he rich like me?
can be seen as commentary on materialism versus emotional connection, a theme that resonated with the youth of that time. The song stands out for its minimalistic, almost hypnotic groove. Rod Argent's organ solo adds a layer of psychedelia, creating a trance-like effect that separates Time of the Season from more straightforward rock of the era. Time of the Season's psychedelic, seductive atmosphere and timeless sound ensure that it remains one of the most recognizable songs of the 1960s. And that, my friends, is the real deal. I hope you enjoyed this story and the others on the channel. And also, you can become a member and get access to the stories uncensored and ad-free. Be sure to like and subscribe and share with someone who might enjoy this. See you next time.
Time of the season for love.